Stop looking for the exit. You believe you were born into the wrong room, the wrong body, the wrong tragedy. You are mistaken. The cage you find yourself in is not a prison. It is the only architecture designed to hold the specific weight of your soul. You have spent years trying to polish a mask you think the world wants, while the fire inside you is starving. The truth is terrifying. The life you are living is the only one that can force you to become who you actually are. We are haunted by the illusion that we are in control of our own narrative. But look closer at your deepest anxieties, the shadows you fear to acknowledge. They are not mistakes. They are the dark, necessary soil where your potential is buried. To reject your nature is to commit a crime against your own development. Every conflict, every limitation, every inexplicable hunger you feel is a summons. It is a voice calling you to look inward, to claim the parts of yourself you have discarded, and to stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What does this demand of me?" If you are ready to stop running from your own reflection and finally integrate the parts of yourself you've been ignoring, subscribe and join us as we explore the architecture of the psyche. The concept of the fated vessel posits that your existence is not a chaotic accident of biology and chance, but rather the essential psychological container required for your personal development. We often harbor the naive belief that our circumstances, our temperament, the era of our birth, our familial wounds, and our inherent limitations are obstacles to be overcome or erased. In reality, these elements form the precise, non-negotiable architecture of your life. Imagine a seed that requires a specific soil acidity, temperature, and depth to germinate. It does not complain about the density of the earth, for that density is exactly what it needs to push against in order to sprout. Similarly, the specific weight of your soul, your unique neuroses, gifts, and burdens, has been placed into a life scenario that acts as a crucible. If you were given a different life, you would not become a better version of yourself. You would simply be a different, unformed entity. This container is intentionally restrictive because without the friction provided by your specific set of difficulties, you would never be compelled to reach into the depths of your psyche to find the resources necessary for wholeness. To question your current reality is to misunderstand the economy of the soul, which trades in the currency of necessity rather than comfort. When you stop viewing your life as a series of random misfortunes and begin to see it as a tailored instrument of growth, you cease to be a passive observer of your own existence. You recognize that the very edges of your container define the boundaries you must eventually transcend. Embracing this vessel is the first, vital step towards self-actualization, as it shifts your focus from a vain attempt to escape your nature toward the profound, transformative work of fulfilling the potential already encoded within the specific limitations you have been granted. The shadow is the sum of those aspects of your character that you have deemed unacceptable, shameful, or incompatible with the persona you present to the world. It is a storehouse of all the instincts, desires, and traits you have suppressed to earn the approval of society or to protect your fragile ego. Because you have cast these pieces into the darkness, you falsely believe they are no longer part of you. However, the psyche is a totality, and that which is denied does not disappear. It merely retreats into the basement of your awareness, where it exerts an autonomous and often destructive influence. When you project these rejected qualities onto others, labeling their behaviors as evil or annoying, you are merely witnessing the unrecognized fragments of your own soul. The shadow is not inherently wicked. It is the repository of your raw, unrefined vitality, your repressed creativity, and the very energy you need to stand fully in your power. To ignore it is to live as a fragment, perpetually off balance and vulnerable to being blindsided by your own buried reactions. The work of integration requires the courage to descend into the cellar and retrieve what you have locked away. It demands that you confront the ugly, the aggressive, and the socially prohibited parts of your nature with a dispassionate, objective gaze. By acknowledging that you contain both the capacity for destruction and the potential for immense grace, you cease to be a puppet of your unconscious drives. Integration is not about indulging the shadow, but about becoming conscious of it so that it no longer dictates your life from the dark. Only by embracing the entirety of your being, your light and your dark, can you achieve the wholeness that represents the true fulfillment of your nature, transforming the monster you fear into the fuel that powers your development. The assumption that we are the conscious masters of our own minds is perhaps the most pervasive and dangerous illusion we harbor. We like to believe that our choices are the result of rational deliberation, that our values are self-authored, and that our behavior is under our direct command. However, beneath the thin, illuminated surface of the ego lies a vast, oceanic realm of the psyche, a deep, ancient expanse that operates according to its own laws, rhythms, and autonomous functions. This unconscious is not a blank slate, but a reservoir of inherited patterns, primordial images, and instinctual drives that were established long before the dawn of modern reason. These forces do not wait for your permission to act. They express themselves through your moods, your sudden compulsions, your inexplicable fears, and the recurring themes that weave themselves into the fabric of your life. When you feel a sudden surge of irrational anger or find yourself drawn to a path that seems to contradict your logic, you are experiencing the architecture of the deep psyche exerting its influence. We are governed by currents we can neither see nor fully control, and to pretend otherwise is to invite a life of fragmentation. By failing to acknowledge that we are lived by these forces rather than merely living them, we remain perpetually surprised by our own reactions and caught in a cycle of reactivity. True psychological maturity begins with the humble admission that the ego is not the commander-in-chief, but rather a small light flickering in a vast, dark cavern. By turning our attention inward and attempting to establish a dialogue with this autonomous, unconscious design, we stop fighting against the tides of our own nature and begin the necessary work of aligning our conscious intentions with the profound, hidden wisdom that drives the engine of the soul. When you resist the inherent nature of your life or fight against the specific circumstances surrounding your existence, you are essentially declaring war on the very friction required for your evolution. We often view hardship, limitations, and the specific quirks of our temperament as obstacles preventing us from achieving a desired state of peace or success. This perspective, however, is deeply flawed because it views the psyche as a static object rather than a dynamic process. Just as a physical muscle requires the resistance of weight to develop strength, the soul requires the resistance of reality to forge a coherent identity. When you attempt to sidestep the difficult tasks, the uncomfortable emotions, or the mundane burdens of your daily reality, you are avoiding the very crucible that transforms potential into actuality. Every time you recoil from the discomfort of your own truth or blame the world for your lack of progress, you are choosing to remain in a state of arrested development. This resistance is not merely a temporary setback. It is an act of self-betrayal that keeps you trapped in a shallow version of your own life. The friction you feel, the tension between who you are and the demands of your environment, is the exact energy necessary to catalyze your growth. To accept this struggle is to recognize that your current trials are not punishments, but essential instruments of refinement. By stopping your resistance and leaning into the constraints of your existence, you cease to be a victim of circumstance and begin to harness the creative power of your own unique path. You move from a state of reactive suffering to a state of active forging, realizing that the heat of your struggles is exactly what is needed to burn away the inessential parts of your ego and reveal the core of your true emerging self. If you are ready to stop running from your own reflection and finally integrate the parts of yourself you've been ignoring, subscribe and join us as we explore the architecture of the psyche. The transition into true selfhood requires the heavy, often agonizing burden of consciousness. The decision to see both the brilliance of your aspirations and the undeniable reality of your darkness. Most people spend their entire lives in a state of semi-consciousness, moving through the motions dictated by collective standards, social expectations, and the unexamined scripts passed down by their ancestors. To step out of this state is to accept a profound and lonely responsibility. You can no longer plead ignorance. Once you realize that you possess a shadow and that your life is driven by forces you have previously ignored, you lose the comfort of blaming external circumstances for your inner state. This awakening is heavy because it strips away the protective veil of the victim mentality. You are forced to look at the ways in which you have contributed to your own suffering, your own stagnation, and your own betrayal of your potential. Yet, this burden is precisely what liberates you from the shadows of others. If you refuse to carry the weight of your own awareness, you are destined to become a mere vessel for the projections and neuroses of the collective, living out a life that is essentially a hollow imitation of someone else's expectations. Taking ownership of your light and your darkness is the only way to establish true sovereignty. It is a demanding, tireless task, requiring you to remain awake when others choose the ease of sleep and to face the uncomfortable truths that the world would prefer you to ignore. By choosing to bear this burden, you transform your life from a passive reaction to the environment into an active, deliberate expression of your unique soul. This is the heavy price of individuality, but it is the only path that leads to a life of substance, meaning, and authentic authority over one's own existence. Sovereignty is not a gift bestowed upon you by favorable circumstances. It is a profound state of being that you earn through the radical acceptance of your specific burdens. Many individuals mistakenly believe that freedom is synonymous with the absence of constraints or the ability to choose an easy path. In truth, the freedom to define oneself is found precisely within the parameters of the life you have been dealt. You do not possess the power to choose your starting point. The genetic inheritance, the family history, or the societal context into which you were born are all variables assigned by fate. However, the measure of your character is found entirely in how you relate to these raw materials. When you resent your burdens, you allow them to act as chains, tethering you to a past you cannot change and a victimhood that saps your vitality. Conversely, when you consciously accept these specific challenges as the foundational components of your life, a shift occurs. You cease to be a passive object tossed about by external forces and begin to function as a conscious subject capable of integrating those very burdens into your narrative. This acceptance is not passive resignation or an act of defeat. It is a deliberate, courageous act of ownership. By embracing your scars, your limitations, and your unique history, you strip them of their power to define you negatively. Instead, you reclaim them as the necessary tools of your psychological forge. What were once heavy weights hindering your progress become the very materials from which you construct your individual identity. Sovereignty, therefore, is the realization that your life is not a mistake to be corrected, but a specific, demanding path to be walked. By fully accepting the what is of your existence, you gain the authority to transform your path, turning the chains of your history into the path of your destiny. Your individual soul is not an isolated island adrift in a void. It is inextricably linked to the vast primordial sea of human history. We often fall into the trap of believing that our personal struggles, our deepest anxieties, and our most haunting dreams are unique catastrophes that belong only to us. In reality, you are a participant in a collective heritage, carrying the echoes of every human experience that has come before. The patterns of your life, the archetypal conflicts, the desire for meaning, and the fear of the unknown are reflections of a shared psychological architecture that connects you to the entire history of the species. When you face your own darkness, you are not merely engaging in a private battle. You are traversing a landscape that has been mapped by the collective unconscious for millennia. This connection is not a burden to be feared, but a profound source of perspective. By recognizing that your struggle is part of a timeless, universal story, you strip away the isolation that often exacerbates personal suffering. You begin to understand that the challenges you face are not signs of your own personal failure, but the necessary rites of passage inherent in the human condition. This realization transforms your perspective from one of lonely victimization to one of participation in a grand, ongoing drama. You are a bridge between the ancient past and the future, carrying forward the seeds of human potential encoded within your specific life. Embracing this heritage means acknowledging that you are a thread in a tapestry far larger than your ego. By accepting that your struggle is both uniquely yours and fundamentally human, you tap into a wellspring of resilience and wisdom that transcends the limitations of your own biography, allowing you to walk your path with the knowledge that you are never truly walking alone. The ultimate purpose of a human life is the process of individuation, a relentless, lifelong endeavor to manifest the complete totality of your being. It is the movement toward becoming exactly who you were meant to be, a process that requires the harmonious integration of the conscious ego and the vast, mysterious depths of the unconscious. Most people navigate their days as split beings, projecting their inner world onto the outer environment and identifying only with the persona they present to society. Individuation demands something far more difficult. It asks that you dismantle these artificial boundaries to allow the hidden, often contradictory elements of your personality to merge into a singular, cohesive whole. This does not mean you become a finished, perfect product. Rather, you become a realized individual, one who has successfully reconciled the light and dark, the masculine and feminine, and the known and the unknown. This path is not about social achievement, material success, or the pursuit of fleeting happiness, but about the profound duty to realize the inherent potential encoded within your unique soul. It is a solitary journey, often marked by the feeling of being an outsider, because the path to wholeness inevitably leads you away from the comfortable conformity of the collective. You must confront the terrifying reality that you are more than what you think you are, and that your true self lies in the shadows you have been avoiding. By consistently choosing to integrate your fragmented parts and acknowledging the vast mystery of your own inner life, you fulfill the primary function of existence. Individuation is the courageous act of turning yourself into a conscious vessel for the truth of your own being, ensuring that when you eventually leave this life, you do so having manifested the absolute entirety of your potential, leaving nothing of your soul's true nature left unexpressed. The life you are living is not a random sequence of events or a mistake to be rectified. It is a meticulously crafted container designed to hold the specific weight of your soul. You have been placed exactly where you are because this is the only crucible capable of forging your unique essence. To constantly question your circumstances is to misunderstand the economy of your own growth, for the friction, the shadows, and the hidden currents you struggle against are not obstacles. They are the very materials of your unfolding. You are not meant to remain a fragmented ego clinging to a comfortable, unexamined life. You are meant to be a whole, integrated being who has dared to descend into the depths to claim the entirety of your heritage. By turning inward and accepting the responsibility of your own consciousness, you cease to be a passive victim of fate and instead become the conscious architect of your own destiny. This is the heavy, sacred work of individuation, to stop running from the mirror, to integrate the dark with the light, and to honor the mysterious ancient architecture that defines your path. Your soul was chosen for this specific journey, with all its burdens and its brilliance, not to be questioned, but to be fully lived. Do not look for an exit from the life you have been given. Look for the courage to walk through the center of it, for only in that total acceptance will you finally become the person you were always meant to be. The design is perfect, the summons is clear, and the responsibility to manifest your full potential belongs to no one but you.